we asked previously, in the year 2023, we asked you as a church your best marriage advice. And so this was online on our Facebook page. And so you gave us, again, not dating advice, but marriage advice. And so I looked years ago and I thought, this is some good stuff, good info for building our marriages in 2025. So here I'm going to give you some of the words that you said to me about a year and a half ago. This church said their marriage advice. So these are some of the things you said. Getting married means that you are committing to make it work no matter what, for better or for worse. This person also said, communicate, 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 repeat. They said, pursue each other, because a lot of times we can kind of get in a rut in our marriages where we kind of forget to pursue each other. This person wrote, communication is very important. No one except God can read your mind. Praying together, reading scripture together, and a good sense of humor all help a marriage. Someone else typed in, don't ask me, I'm happily single. Showing affection, saying I love you, doing things together, talk to each other daily, show your love and speak it. Work out issues if you have them. Someone wrote, you will want to murder them, but don't do it. Someone wrote, learn to compromise because one person can't always be right. This person wrote 3 things. Put your spouse above your kids. Put your spouse above your kids. They said, take the trip, make memories, go away with your partner. Share household duties. This person wrote, don't buy too many pairs of shoes. Okay, I added that. This person wrote, put your spouse above yourself. The pastor told us this during our pre-marriage counseling years ago, and I've used that advice on a daily basis. Love on them constantly. Someone else wrote, for the ladies, before you say I do, sign a paper that says, I do not go for car parts. Also, don't complain if he wants to go fishing all the time. Attend church, read God's word, and pray together. Value the time you have together above all. Drop them off at the door when going to the store. Give them the highest care that you possibly can. Always listen to each other's side of the problem. Your spouse should be your best friend and always share your love of the Lord. This person wrote, forgive, 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 repeat. Someone else wrote, don't expect to change your spouse. Don't go into marriage expecting to do so. So there you have a lot of wisdom from you guys on marriage. Today we're going to continue on in the book of Proverbs. Marriage can be a problem. Today we're going to continue on in the book of Proverbs, and we're going to look at relationships, and we're going to consider a group of passages that seek to give wisdom on specifically male and female relationships. And I know today, this morning, among you, we have many different ages, we have many different life stages, and we have many different relationship statuses represented here today. But I would say this, those of you who are in the wanting to get married category are actually probably the closest to the original target audience of many of these proverbs that I'm going to talk about. Proverbs mostly, if you read through it, it actually mostly helps you select better marriage partners. It helps you discern, should I date this person? Should I marry this person? What kind of person do I want to marry? And I think it combines that with some marriage advice. But the truth is, as we'll see today, there's a lot here for all of us, whether we're married or not, whether we hope to be or not. And so Proverbs, you can kind of imagine that a young man is sitting down with his father or mother, and they are explaining things about marriage. And so you can imagine that there's a father-son fishing, and he's explaining to his young son about what to look for in a married partner, or a mother and daughter, and they're sitting at coffee and they're talking about marriage and what you want to look for in a partner. And I would say this too, I hope that if you have kids, if you have grandkids, I do hope that you're in their ear, so to speak, about marriage. Because if you think about it in your life, there's 4, I would say, really important, decisions. First of all, with your, 4 major decisions that you make in your life. First of all, the most important decision is, will you follow Jesus or not? Why is that the most important? It's an eternal decision. It's an eternal decision. Will you follow Jesus or not and be a Christian? The second, I would say, is, will you get married? And you might not get married. Will you get married, and to whom? Or even, will you compromise as a Christian and marry a non-Christian? And I would say this, some people decide against marriage. That's totally fine. God might have called you to singleness. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You got to look at Scripture. You look at Paul. You look at Jesus. Both, incredible people that were single. And the third most important decision, which goes along with marriage, is, will you have children, and how many? That's a question that's asked a lot of times in premarital counseling, and a lot of times people have different expectations about that. And the third thing is, what's your calling? What are you going to do with your life? What's your purpose? What are you going to do for work while you're here on earth? The thing about marriage is, marriage was invented by God, and it is therefore good. It was invented by God, and it's therefore good. It's part of the created order. It goes right back to Genesis with Adam and Eve. Adam was alone, and he created Eve, and they were married. And so I would say this, you're going to hear a lot of things about marriage in our culture. You're going to see a lot of things about marriage on TV. If you watch TV a lot, I would say reject what our culture is saying about marriage, a lot of it. A lot of times it's demonizing marriage and the family unit. It's causing a lot of confusion in the area of marriage. It's allowing sin to reign. God is the creator of marriage, and there's nothing bad about it. Our culture has kind of diluted it. It's brought sin and shame into it, and selfishness. And again, God has something good. Satan comes in and he counterfeits it and makes it not good. The first thing I want to explain is that the Bible supports marriage and intimacy. The Bible supports marriage and intimacy. Proverbs 30:18-19 says this: 3 things are too wonderful for me, for I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a virgin. A couple years ago, on my way to church, I was driving on 30, and I came upon, I looked up ahead, and there was this huge bird, and I couldn't make it out, and I'm driving toward it, and as I got closer, it was a bald eagle. And as I got closer to it in my car, the bird took off, and then I hit it. No, I'm just kidding. Janet would have me arrested. I'm just making sure you're paying attention. No, it flew off, and I kind of was gaping at it and almost hit the car in front of me. But have you ever seen a bald eagle fly in the sky? It's beautiful. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. How it moves, how it gets from point A to point B, how it lands on a tree, how it takes off. And it's really, it's hard to describe exactly what's happening as it moves through the currents and how this eagle is moving, but it's just wonderful to see. You just look up and you're like, wow, this is just amazing. And you know what else is wonderful? Men and women together. It's not weird. This is talking about a married man, a newly married man and a woman that are together. And this is the way that a man pursues and wins the love of a woman, such that she pledges her life to him and then welcomes him to come and know her in the most intimate way possible. And it's wonderful. It's too wonderful for words. Marriage and intimacy done God's way is wonderful, And I'm trying to be sensitive here, but the place of deepest intimacy between a new husband and wife is kind of what the Hebrew wording here is pointing us toward. And it's not embarrassing. It's good. This is not dirty. God designed marriage. God designed sex. The point of the passage is that it's wonderful. The Bible's not embarrassed about celebrating the goodness of marital intimacy. God invented marital intimacy, and actually even several modern studies have told us what the Bible has told us all along throughout history, that it's those who obey God who experience the real joy that he intended for marriage. So our first stop today is a celebration of marriage at its most intimate, and according to Proverbs, it's a good and a wonderful thing. Marriage is a good and wonderful thing. Second, a godly wife is a gift from God. A godly wife is a gift from God. And the wife should be treated as a wonderful gift. And for us, for those of us men here who are married, we have to ask ourselves, do we treat our wives as gifts? Do we treat our wives as gifts? This is something that the Father wanted his Son to understand in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 18:22, it says this: "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." Proverbs 19:14, "House and wealth are inherited from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord." That's what the Son should want. That's what the Son should desire. He doesn't want just any wife. He wants a prudent and godly wife. And his Father is basically saying here, as your father, I can't give that to you. I can't give you a godly wife. I can give you a house. I can give you money when you die, but I can't give you a good wife. You have to choose to pursue a godly wife. You have to choose to pursue a godly wife, and that'll come from the Lord. So pray and choose wisely. Proverbs 12:4, it says this: "An excellent wife is the crown of her husband, but she who brings shame is like rottenness in his bones." An excellent wife brings glory to her husband in the way that a crown brings glory to the head of a king. She adorns him, she empowers him, she encourages him. Number one fan, and she brings him honor and status. And an excellent wife is not a mere trophy to be put on display. She's not a trophy wife. because she looks good. This has nothing to do with appearance and has everything to do with her character, her work ethic, her strength, her wisdom as a woman. And it's saying marry a person of high character. Marry a person of integrity. And the verse goes on to say there are incredible dangers in marrying a woman who is not wise and prudent, right? She brings shame. And it's like rottenness in his bones. Watch out. Watch out. Watch out for Delilah. Watch out for Jezebel. Watch out for women who suck you in with their beauty but aren't beautiful people. Watch out for women who hate men. They're kind of on the feminist spectrum, or they use people or manipulate people. Tell your sons about these women. You know, in our culture, there's a lot of feminism, you know, and basically what it teaches is that women, they walk ahead of the men. And there's also, on the flip side of that, there's toxic masculinity where the men, they walk in front of the women. It's not the way it's supposed to be. God teaches us to be side by side, an unbreakable team. And there's no I in team. Side by side. We're supposed to be side by side, working as a team. And when a man is married to a woman who brings him shame by being unfaithful or ungodly or foolish, it's like he has bone cancer. It's rottenness to the bones. And it's true. We've probably seen that in our lives. An ungodly wife can tear a man apart from the inside out. See a very, very depressed man. So what Proverbs has said is that marriage and intimacy are good and they are from God, and that a godly wife is a gift. And so what Proverbs also talks about, and this is for my sons and daughters as well as anybody here who's considering marriage, is Proverbs kind of answers the question, how is the son to marry well? How is the son to marry well? What kind of woman should he avoid? What kind of woman should he seek? This is an important question. Well, first of all, we're going to answer the question, well, what to avoid? The father then talks to the son about a woman who is beautiful but foolish. And it comes from this verse, Proverbs 11:22. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. What good is a gold ring in a pig's snout? What good is it? A gold ring in a pig's snout. It's no good at all. It's meaningless. It's just going to get coated with whatever the pig is eating. Doesn't make sense. It's out of place. Same thing, physical beauty is out of place on a woman with no character or morals or good judgment. Let me say that again. Physical beauty is out of place on a woman with no character or morals or good judgment. You don't want that kind of girl, son. You don't want to marry that kind of girl. You know that girl, I'm a Barbie girl, you don't want to marry that type of girl. She's into herself. I mean, how many beautiful women have absolutely ruined men? You know, just because someone's beautiful doesn't mean that they're a beautiful person or a godly wife. Don't get fooled by the beauty. Many men have been led to the slaughter in this way. Samson, what happened to him? He fell for Delilah. Look at Solomon, King Solomon. He fell. All these women, these wives he had, they turned his head away from God. Your lady that you choose should lead you to God, not away from God. Should lead you to God, not away from him. Proverbs 31:30 puts it this way. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Outer beauty is supposed to reflect inner beauty. Outer beauty is supposed to be a reflection of inner beauty. And that's why the Bible repeatedly tells us to prioritize inner beauty. Inner beauty. Now, I'm not saying you should be, attracted to your wife. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a given. But there needs to be a healthy Christian person inside there, full of character. And that's why the Father, he's just warning the Son against a woman who is merely outwardly beautiful and nothing else. That's his first warning. His second warning, he warns his Son against a woman who is argumentative. Right? Proverbs 21:9, it says it. Don't stone me. It's better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. Middle Eastern rooftops were flat and exposed to the elements. And these verses say it would be better to be put up there, exposed and uncomfortable, than to live a life with a quarrelsome, argumentative, or contentious, someone who breathes contempt. Proverbs 21:19 kind of makes the point even more dramatically. It's better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. And deserts are terrible places in the Middle East. There's no shelter in the desert. There's no food in the desert. There's no water in the desert. And Proverbs says it's better to choose than to live with a wife who's constantly argumentative. Irritation, that constantly speaks irritation and anger. Proverbs 19:13, a foolish son is ruined to his father, and a wife's quarreling is continual dripping of the rain. Now, I want you to be very clear. I'm not talking about being silent. I'm not talking about not speaking the truth in life, in your marriage. I'm not talking about, being a pushover or a doormat in any sense of the word, or not speaking, her mind in the marriage. Men need a woman they respect and that can speak into their lives. And a lot of times men need to be spoken to. They need to be criticized and analyzed. I'm really talking about this, the drama queen, the being difficult, being argumentative. And I would say this, I'm kind of been more picking or focusing on the women. And the thing is, the way God designed a marriage, God has called and designed husbands in the marriage to carry the load of sacrificial leadership in their marriages. The man should be a servant leader, should be the captain of the ship, and he's responsible before God to lead his family, to put them in a position for spiritual growth. And it is a weighty and heavy responsibility. You've probably all felt that if you've been married. A lot of times it's heavy. Leading a family as a man will take everything that you have. And this is saying don't marry someone who will make that more difficult than it already is. Marry someone who helps. Marry someone who helps. God has clearly called wives in the Bible to fall under the male leadership. But as anyone who has been married knows, the arrangement sometimes is not always easy. It's not always easy. And I would say a lot of times, many times, the man, it's the fault of the guy because they're not leading. They're not leading. They're not falling under, they're not following God. And many times, I think the woman wants the husband to lead, but he won't. He's busy with hobbies and watching TV, or he's passive. And so there's this struggle in marriages. Genesis 3:16, remember God told Eve, your desires shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. Most of us know that have been married know exactly what I'm talking about. there's this marital male-female tension. Who's in charge in the marriage? God designed it that the husband would lead sacrificially like Jesus in the marriage. A lot of times they don't do that. And that the woman would follow his leadership and help, and that they would be equal partners. They would be a team together. And again, there's a lot of tension in that. And a lot of times guys need to step up and lead. Now, I hope also when you see these verses are saying that being married also is not always better than not being married. The worst, James Dobson used to say this, the worst case of loneliness is better than being in a bad marriage. The loneliest feeling is being in a bad marriage. Proverbs is saying, wouldn't you rather be a single guy living in a nice house than a guy who's technically married but has to live by himself out in the desert, so to speak? This is important because many young people especially have this idea that it's worth it to get married at whatever cost. They just want to be a Mr. or a Mrs. I would say take your time, get to know the person you're dating, and pray, and pray some more about choosing a partner. Because throughout the year, I've seen many, many young people throw their life away, their ambitions, their convictions, even their faith, to get married to the first person with a pulse who showed them interest. Be discerning. I've seen really incredible women, intelligent women, kind of throw everything away for some guy. They cancel themselves out for some guy who's not even a Christian. The right guy's going to love you for who you are. And I've seen men too. Men, they missionary date a woman because she's beautiful. And turns out she's not really into God, she's just into them, and then they have an unequally yoked marriage. I would just say this, and it's not perfect information, but marry a Christian. Make it in your mind that you're going to marry a Christian. And take your time dating, get to know them, get to know their families, ask other Christian leaders, parents, and pastors around, what do you think of this? And pray, and pray some more about, it's a huge decision to get married. And a lot of you might be here today and you're like, man, I wish I understood a lot of this stuff from the Bible, 30 years ago. And I don't want to throw deeper troubles onto marriages. The thing is, all marriages can heal, all marriages can forgive, and all marriages can get better. God can do the impossible. There's hope, really, for every marriage. Even if you're married to an unbeliever, you can be faithful to God. But I also want to wave, the warning flag to unmarried people who feel this temptation to get married at all costs. Well, most of the time in Proverbs, it seems to talk about what kind of woman to marry. But the men also do get warned in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 27:8 says this, like a bird that strays from its nest is a man who strays from his home. A man is worse than a bird brain when he wanders far from his home. And unmarried ladies, the whole book of Proverbs is full of warnings and descriptions of the kind of guy that you don't want to marry. You don't want to marry a man who's violent. You don't want to marry a man who's lazy. You don't want to marry a man who thinks he knows everything, who can't take a rebuke, who doesn't listen to others, who is rash, who can't control his temper or anger or his words or his appetites. I remember this pastor, Mark Driscoll, and he's just said, marry a guy, first of all, who's a Christian, who goes to church. Marry a guy who has a job or is pursuing one. Marry a guy who respects his mother and a guy who mows the lawn. Proverbs 31, the last chapter in Proverbs, talks about the ideal wife. I think Proverbs 32, if there was one, would be about men, and it would say just marry a Christian, marry a guy who works hard, marry a guy who respects his mother and is responsible. So the other question that we pose is what should we look for? We talked about avoiding just beauty and the argumentative spirit. What should a young man seek as he looks for an excellent wife? So we'll turn to Proverbs 31. The clearest answer of what to look for in a wife, if you're to tell your sons or grandsons, it's one of the most, I would say, best known and maybe least understood passage. It's Proverbs 31, 10 to 31. In Hebrew, this chapter 31, is an acrostic poem, which means that each line from verses 10 to 31 begin with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Basically, the whole chapter is saying, here's everything from A to Z that you need to know about an excellent wife. The second thing that you need to know about Proverbs 31, this wasn't an isolated man's wish list that he just wrote down. This is what I want. It says, chapter 31, verse 1, the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. It was taught to the king by his mother. It was his mother knows best wish list. This is a concerned mom who wanted his son to find an excellent wife, and so they write Proverbs 31. It says this, excellent wife material. Verse 13, she seeks wool and flax. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hand, she plants a vineyard. Verse 19, she put her hands to the spindle. Verse 22, she makes bed coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. And those activities that are described in Proverbs 31 were simply the kind of activities that happened within busy, prosperous household in ancient Israel. If it was modern day, it would say she does the Christmas shopping on Amazon. It would say, modern things that we have to do. Proverbs 31:27, I think, really sums it all up. It says, she looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. And that's the point. She's not lazy. She's not a Beverly Hills housewife. And there's more than just hard work and doing things. Verse 20 describes her generosity to the poor. Verse 25 describes her character of strength and dignity. Verse 26 says that wisdom and kindness flow from her mouth. In other words, what we see here in Proverbs 31 is a woman serving in a role as her husband's ultimate helper. Proverbs 31, 11 to 12, it says, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. And we shouldn't miss this. The primary relationship for this Proverbs 31 woman is a relationship with her husband. Yeah, she's a good mom. In the chapter, her children call her blessed. She's taking care of them along with everybody else in the household. But the woman is not primarily defined by her relationship with her children. And I bring that up because it's a really popular idea, even in Christian circles, that women find their identity in being a mother, and a relationship with children is seen as central and the defining relationship in the family. Dad, he can just be an accessory who should pay the bills and try not to get in the way. That's not the way it's designed. The priority relationship is the husband and the wife, then comes the kids. It's the priority relationship. And so, just in closing, I think we have to remember that whether we're single or whether we're married, The best way in marriage or the best way out of marriage is to work on ourselves, right? We can always focus on the other person. I want them to do this. I want them to do this. What about me? How can I become a better husband? How can I become a better wife? If I'm single, are you ready? Are you ready as a person if the right person comes along? Are you that person of character? We can make the most. If you're single, you can make the most of your singleness. You can have the character of the Proverbs 31 wife, or what I said, the Proverbs 32 wife. I'm going to just pray for this, and after that, we'll transition into our communion service. Dear Heavenly Father, relationships, male and female, we think a lot about them. There's a lot of things to consider if we're married. God, if we're married, I pray that you would help us to be what God designed us to be. If we're guys here, that you would help us to learn how to lead our families sacrificially, serving our wives. If we're wives here, you help us to understand what kind of woman we need to be, and to just model the Proverbs 31 wife. And Father, I just pray that you'll help each one of us to look at ourselves and ask, how can I do it better? Father, I pray for those that are single. I pray that you would guide them too, as they might be soon making decisions about relationships. Give them your wisdom. Give them your wisdom. Give them the wisdom of Proverbs. And so, Father, I pray for our marriages in this church. I pray that you would put a hedge of protection around them. I pray that you would help us as husbands and wives to love each other well and to sacrifice for each other, especially during the Christmas season. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to